Welcome to the fourth installment on festivals. Today we're going to talk about Sukkot itself. As we mentioned before, there was a bit of luxury for the last couple of lessons. Actually, the last three, they were fairly short. This one's going to be a bit more extensive and is going to require you probably to rewatch again. The festivals of the Torah and their meanings transcend any particular time or place. Nevertheless, each one of the holidays is anchored in some event in Jewish history. Yom Kippur is the most important Jewish holiday after Rosh Hashanah. However, its historical anchor and meaning are both unique to Israel alone. Now, you're going to find it's going to have a universal fulfillment or purpose for the nations, but it has been assigned for Israel, and you're going to understand why it is assigned to Israel. Just put in the back of your head this little piece of knowledge. God said to his people that they are a priest to the nations. They are priests to the world and to the nations. And you'll understand, we'll tie that all in just a moment. The purpose and theme of Yom Kippur, though, has a universal parallel in the holiday of Sukkot. Furthermore, the historical anchor of Sukkot is directly related to Noahidism. Now, Yom Kippur and its history is pretty detailed, and let me give you a little background. On the seventh day of Sivan, Moses ascended Mount Sinai and remained there for 40 days and 40 nights. If you look at Rashi for an explanation on Exodus 32, verse 1. At the end of this period, Moses received the first set of tablets. On the 16th of Tammuz, the Jewish people constructed the golden calf. They began worshiping it on the following morning. That is found in Exodus 32, verse 6. God commands Moses to descend on that day, in the 17th of Tammuz. Upon seeing the people's transgressions, Moses cast down the tablets, breaking them on the mountain. He grinds the calf into dust, mixing it with water, and makes the people drink it. The people's stomachs distended, and the Levites were commanded to kill all the transgressors. The reason why they knew they had transgressed is because their stomachs had descended and they had become very ill. On the 19th of Tammuz, Moses ascends back up the mountain, found in Exodus 32, 30 through 34. During his ascent, Moses secured a tentative pardon for the people. He descended at the end of 40 days, and on the 29th of Av, to inform the people of this. He states, on the first of Elul, Moses ascended the mountain for the third time. During this third 40-day ascent, Moses finally achieved pardon for the Jewish people. At the end of this period, Moses ascended with the second set of tablets. The date of this descent was the 10th of Teshri, which is we call Yom Kippur. This day would be designated as the Day of Atonement for the Jewish people for all time. This shall remain for you as an eternal decree. In the seventh month, and on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict yourselves, and you shall not do any work, neither the native nor the convert among you. For on this day you shall provide atonement for you to cleanse you with the sins. Before the Lord, you shall be cleansed. Yom Kippur's general theme is atonement. It is anchored in the history of the Jewish people and the sin of the golden calf. Now, being anchored in the historical experience of Israel and being commanded only to Israel, Yom Kippur only provides atonement for Israel. As such, it is not a holiday for Noahides. It's specifically for Israel, and therefore does not have any relevance to Noahides on that surface, but you'll understand more in a minute and how it does apply to you. Does this mean that Noahides don't have a means of atonement? Well, no, not at all. It does not. And God designated another time for the Noahides' atonement. Guess what time that was? The offerings of Sukkot. Do you remember this? As we have mentioned several times in previous lessons, many of the Torah's festivals have both universal meanings and specific meanings. The specific meanings of the festivals pertain only to the Jewish people. The universal meanings, however, are those for the entire world. It is these latter universal meanings which are festivals' meanings for Noahides. The Mishnah tells us At 4 junctures, the world is judged. On Passover, for grain; on Shavuot, for fruits; on Rosh Hashanah, all pass before him like sheep of the flock, as it is written, he formed their hearts as one. He understands all their deeds. Psalm 33. Now in Sukkot, the world is judged for water. The Mishnah is teaching us the universality, relevant themes of the following holidays. For Sukkot, as we see, the theme is judgment for water. Specifically, this may seem like an awful narrow concept. However, there is much more going on here than meets the eye. Let's start with the offerings given on the days of Sukkot. Day 1. On the 15th day of the 7th month, there shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall not perform any mundane work. You shall celebrate a festival to the Lord for 7 days. You shall offer up a burnt offering, a fire offering for a spirit of satisfaction to the Lord. 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs in the first year. They shall all be unblemished, and their meal offerings, a fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 for each bull for the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each ram and for the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each lamb for 14 lambs, and the 1 young male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering. It is meal offerings, and it is libations. Day 2. On the 2nd day, 12 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 lambs in the first year, all unblemished, and their meal offerings and their libation offerings for the bulls and for the rams and for the lambs, according to their numbers as prescribed, and 1 young male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its meal offering and libations. Day 3. And on the 3rd day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 lambs in the first year, all unblemished, and their meal offerings and their libations for the bulls and for the rams and for the lambs, according to their numbers, as prescribed. And 1 male goat for the sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its meal offering, and its libations. On day 4, 10 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 lambs in the first year, all unblemished, and their meal offerings and their libations for the bulls and for their rams and for the lambs, according to their numbers, as prescribed. And 1 young male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its meal offering, and its libation. On the 5th day has 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs in the first year, all unblemished, and their meal offerings and their libations for the bulls and for the rams and for the lambs, according to their numbers, as prescribed. And the 1 young male goat for the sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its meal offerings, and its libation. And on the 6th day, 6 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 lambs in the first year, all unblemished, and all their meal offerings and their libations for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, according to their numbers, as prescribed. The 1 young male goat for the sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its meal offerings, and its libations. Day 7. And on the 7th day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs in the first year, all unblemished, all their meal offerings and their libations for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, according to their number, as prescribed to them. 1 young male goat for the sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its meal offerings, and its libations. As you may have noticed, the number of offerings remain essentially the same each day, with the exception of the bull offering. Each day of Sukkot, the bull offering is reduced by 1. Now let's do a little math. I know all of you guys love math. Math was not my excellent pursuit in academics, but we're going to attempt some mathematics. Let's do this. The total number of the offerings is 70. That would be 13 plus 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 equals 70. Now, most of you already know the answer, but let's ask the question, why 70? Rabbi Eliezer said, what do these 70 bulls correspond? They correspond to the 70 nations of the world. Rabbi Yochanan said, woe to the non-Jew who don't even realize that they're lost or they're sinners. As long as the temple stood, the altar atoned for them. Rabbi Eliezer It is telling us that the 70 bulls were offered by Israel as an atonement for the 70 nations, i.e., the reason why this day is important for the Jewish people is they are acting as priests for the nations and bringing offerings for the nations. Rabbi Yochanan laments that the non-Jews who destroyed the temple didn't realize what they were losing. It was the temple that granted them the divine forgiveness and atonement each year through the bull offerings. Let's look at sources of judgment. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Akiva, why did the Torah tell us to bring the Omar offerings on Passover? Because Passover is the time of judgment on the grain. The Holy One, blessed be He, said, bring before me the Omar on Passover that the produce in the fields will be blessed for you. Why did the Torah tell us to bring the 2 loaves of Shavuot? Leviticus 23, verse 17. Because Shavuot is a time for judgment on the days of fruit of the trees. The Holy One, blessed be He, said, bring before me the 2 loaves on Shavuot, that the fruit of the trees will be blessed for you. Why did the Torah tell us to pour water libations on Sukkot? Because the Holy One, blessed be He, said, pour water before me on Sukkot, that the rains may be a blessed for you. The Brisa is telling us that the offerings commanded on each holiday hints to the judgment of that holiday. Now, for each of the festivals mentioned here, as well as for Rosh Hashanah, there are verses in the Torah that allude to the festival's offerings. The one exception is Sukkot. Brisa tells us about water libations on Sukkot. This is a very interesting celebration. What is this, and why is it not mentioned in the Torah? Nesuk Mayim, the water libation. In the times of the temple, every peace offering and burnt offering was accompanied by 4 offerings and wine libation. On Sukkot, however, there was an additional libation of water. The water libation was poured upon the altar at the giving of the morning service. This offering consisted of 2 stages. That is, water drawn ceremonially and actually the pouring of the water each morning. The Levites and the Kohanim drew 3 lug or 3 containers of fresh water from the golden vessel from the stream that ran south of the temple into the pool. The ceremony drawing of water for the libation was an occasion for tremendous joy. The Talmud states, one who has not witnessed the celebration of the water drawing has never seen real joy. Now, this was an extreme time of celebration. All the Chachams, the priests, the Levites, all the Rosh Hashivas, all of the who's who in Jerusalem would come for this water libation and celebration. It was the biggest thing that you ever seen. Lights filled the city, torches being carried throughout the night. It was an amazing celebration. It means that during this time, the reason why everyone wanted to be there is because they drew. Why is the celebration called Beis HaShovah? The celebration place of water drawing. Because there, from the ceremony itself, one draws the spirit of holiness. That's why everyone wanted to be there, is because the spirit of holiness would be drawn upon a person. Yonah ben Amittai, was one of the pilgrims who ascended on Jerusalem on the festival. And he went to that period of time of intense joy, and the spirit of holiness rested upon him, and he attained the spirit of prophecy. This teaches us that the spirit of holiness rests upon a person only when his heart is filled with joy. Following the water drawing was the libation ceremony itself, which was also greatly celebrated and with great fanfare. However, the ceremony of water libation is not mentioned anywhere in the Torah. The sages tell us that this mitzvah is a halakha of Moshe at Sinai. A direct commandment given to Moses at Sinai is part of the Torah Shabbat Peh, meaning the oral Torah. Now, let's look at a summary for it. Let's look at what we just covered. On Sukkot, a water offering is given. Following the lead of the Brisa mentioned above, this would indicate that the world is judged for water on Sukkot. Unlike the offerings associated with all the other festivals, this offering was given as part of the Torah the oral Torah. And this makes this Sukkot and its offering and its judgment uniquely different from all of the other festivals combined. On Sukkot, 70 bull offerings were given and atoned for 70 nations. Rashi writes that there are atonements by way of these offerings is connected to judgment for rainfall. Sukkot is the only holiday upon which the Jews give offerings on behalf of the nations of the world, once again pointing to the priest of the nations. We see from all of these points that there is something very special and very unique about Sukkot. This is why we've taken our time to break down Sukkot into so many parts. Now, Yom Kippur and Sukkot, let's talk about that. It states, "And I will blot out all of the Yakum that I have made." Rabbi Baruchai said, it means all that exists. Rabbi Avun says it means an inhabited world. Now, Rabbi Levi said in the name of the Resh Lakish, it refers to Cain, that is Cain, who had killed Abel, who had been hanging suspended until the flood came and swept away. His full redemption was, and the sin that he had done was in limbo until the flood came. And Bereshit Rabbah 22:13 tells us that Cain repented before God and received a mitigated judgment. We've already seen what happened next. It said that Adam met Cain and asked him, "What happened? What was your judgment?" Cain replied, "I repented," and it was mitigated. Adam began slapping his own face. It said that he cried out. It says, "Such power of repentance, and I didn't know it." Adam immediately arose and declared the Psalm of Shabbat. Let's look at the Midrash very carefully. It appears that from this Midrash that Adam was aware of tshuva, repentance, but unaware of how great the power really was. When Adam saw Cain's success in repenting, he realized something that he did not know. What was the realization? The commentary explains. It seems that Adam was originally under the impression that tshuva only helps when sin has truly been a thing of the past. If the sin is something that continues to cause harm and affect the world, of course, that's what Adam was told. His sin would affect all men. Then tshuva is ineffective. Since Adam's sin introduced death into the world, he could not repent from it. As long as people continue to die, Adam's sin continues to exert influence on the world. Therefore, from Adam's point of view, tshuva wasn't even possible for him. Now let's apply Adam's understanding of tshuva to Cain. It would seem that tshuva was of no help to him either. After all, by killing Abel, Cain prevented countless future generations from being born. Yet we see that Cain was able to do tshuva. Why? Well, the answer is fascinating. God knew that there was an end in sight, a time when the effects of Cain's sin would cause the flood. In the flood, all life except that of one man and his family would be destroyed. Even if Abel had descendants, they would have not have survived, since there was a time when Cain's sin would cease to affect the world. God agreed to accept Cain's repentance. However, it was only a partial acceptance. God would not grant full atonement, and its full effects of the sin were removed from the world at the time of the flood. And we'll discuss this point more in another class. Adam suddenly realized that for him too, there was a time when his sin would cease to affect the world. The time of the world to come. That is why Adam composed Psalm 92, the psalm of praise to the eternal Shabbat of the world to come. We see that the flood provided atonement for the sin of Cain. It was effectively the first day of atonement in history. This atonement was carried out through water. The sin of Cain, his repentance, and his atonement of the flood is the historical anchor of Sukkot in this way. In the same way, that sin of the golden calf, the repentance of the Jews, and the atonement at Sinai is the historical anchor of Yom Kippur. Now, let's tie all this together. We now understand the connections between offerings, rain, and the atonement for all the nations on Sukkot. Offerings are given in the temple, atonement for the nations. Since the first atonement was brought about through water, the day also became a time of judgment of the world's water supply. The pouring of the water upon the altar was part of the ceremony for securing favorable judgment for rain. Now, atonement for the nations came about through the offerings of the bulls. The reason for the offerings of the bulls may be because the Talmud tells us that the angel of rain was called Radayah or Ephbri. He appears as a bull. As we see, these offerings are very, very important. And we understand that the reason why Yom Kippur specifically commanded to the Jewish people was not only was for them to afflict themselves before God and to prepare themselves for the Day of Atonement, but also that Day of Atonement was for them to do a very important work for the people of the nations. Prominent question is often asked, well, we don't have a temple. How are the sins of the nations forgiven now, or how are the sins of the nations dealt with now that we don't have a temple and the sacrifices aren't being done in such a manner on Yom Kippur? Well, here's how it goes, and this is the best explanation that I was given by my rabbi. The Jewish people for 3,700 years have kept a continual structure of Torah and Torah life, have worked very hard to secure it and to build fences around the Torah to preserve it in every aspect. But not just the preservation of Torah, but also the preservation of mitzvahs by doing them, by practicing them, by giving charity, by practicing the law to its purest degree, and also in being a light to the nations. In being a light to the nations, the Jewish people are securing salvation for the world. They're teaching the nations that there are universal principles that if they follow it and they live a life of repentance, God will forgive them of their sins and they can have a momentous relationship with the creator of the universe. It is the Jewish people's priestly duty to the nations. The Kohanim are priests to the Jews and the Jews are priests to the nations. As we approach these high holy days, begin to understand and differentiate the roles and responsibilities of the Jewish people and of the people of the nations. That concludes this fourth class in the series, and we'll see you in the next one. Shalom.